Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We are presented by The Athletic. Today on the show, it's Mark Schindler in the building, the typical Schindler pod that happens once a week on this show. We're going to dive first into the Kevin Love potential buyout situation that may be occurring in Cleveland. Then we're going to talk about the new faces in new places across the NBA. What are our first impressions of NBA trade deadline acquisitions? Finally, we're going to close on one of Mark's favorite things to watch across the NBA right now, Malaki Branham for the San Antonio Spurs. Mark, what's going on, buddy?
I'm good, Sam. I'm glad we can finally catch up and talk some basketball because I've been waiting for it. I'm a little bit perturbed because it was like 50 in Ohio yesterday, and I woke up and my car was covered in snow this morning. So it's been that kind of time. I was like finally starting to think, oh, we're getting away from it. Like it's raining this week instead of it being cold as hell, and we're back. So Midwest. It wouldn't be a pod if I didn't start off with that, but.
No,
I'm good. How's everything on your
You're in February in the Midwest. You always have one more like bad weekend. Once you hit mid-February,
it'll snow.
It'll
snow by May. Like we'll get snow in late April for sure.
Oh yeah, you're in Cleveland. You have like the lake effect and everything.
Yeah, it always happens every year.
Yeah, you're screwed. Yeah. Have fun with that. I'll live in Australia. I have crazy spiders and bugs and things over here, but
yeah, you can keep those the hell away from me.
Yeah, you know what I don't have, Mark? I don't have frost, and I don't have random bouts of ice all over the place. It's lovely.
I'll live with that instead of the spiders because that's yeesh.
Yeah, it's the spiders. You learn to befriend them over time.
Sure.
We'll go with that.
Yeah.
Okay. The first thing we want to talk about is the Kevin Love buyout. It was reported by Adrian Wojnarowski and Shams Charania. Basically, it seemed like simultaneously that Kevin Love and Cleveland are exploring a buyout. Shams and Jason Lloyd at The Athletic mentioned that Miami seems to be a real potential landing spot for Kevin Love. Let's start here. Kevin Love is out of Cleveland's rotation right now. Cleveland's rotation in general seems a little bit weird because they're doing weird things with like Dean Wade, who has been really valuable for them at times. They're doing weird things like throwing Danny Green directly into the fire. I don't really know what to think of what Cleveland is doing rotationally right now. But Kevin Love has been out of the rotation. What do we think Kevin Love has left at this point?
I mean, I think that is the big question. Like, how much of this, his struggles this year, because I mean, this has been bar none his worst year in the NBA. Like, saying that lightly, he's going to. I'm not trying to stoke the fires and say he's a Hall of Famer, but you do have to mention his name with Hall of Fame.
Kevin Love's a Hall of Famer. Yeah. I want to be very clear about this. I feel very strongly that Kevin Love's a Hall of Famer.
About this in the comments and say that he's not, but I agree. But point being, like. It makes sense. He's 34. Like he's been in the league for a long time. Injuries have hampered him. The question is just going to be how much of this was the thumb injury that he sustained early on in the year, and how much this is him just being kind of shot mobility wise. Because I think that's been the bigger problem, more so than his thumb. Like obviously he hasn't shot well, but he just doesn't really seem to have a lot of lift anymore. Not that he had a ton last year either, but it's just a little bit eerily reminiscent of the pre-COVID year. Pre-COVID in the COVID year, so in 2021, when he was really kind of struggling in general with the back injury again. So I think that's going to be the biggest hinge factor on it. But also the fact that is part of the equation is like, okay, well, what if that is the issue? Like, what if maybe he's looking better after having some time off? Maybe if we can, get him in with our training staff and, work on making sure that he's good and ready to go. Like, I mean, obviously he does that himself without question, but like, I think if a team can feel really good about what that could look like and say, hey, we can have 15 to 20 minutes of pretty good Kevin Love, that is a swing factor for a few teams.
Yeah. So let's kind of talk about what Kevin Love has been this season. So per Daryl Blackport's terrific play-by-play stats.com, Kevin Love this season The Cavs are +7 without him in the minutes on the court. They are +3.6 with him on the court. Their defensive rating is 111.97. That's a little bit over 2 points worse per 100 possessions. But here's the thing. Basically 112, that range, is 7th place in the league defensively. So while I do have real concerns that Kevin Love can't really move anymore, and there have been some very bad tape moments, like clips that you can pull that show that Kevin Love really is struggling to move right now. The Cavs have been okay with him on the court defensively, which I think is a testament as much as anything to the defensive insulation they have around him, but also he's a smart defender and he's a very smart basketball player. I think he knows that he's always had a very real knowledge of what his limitations are, I think, on that end. And he kind of gets away with being slow. Like, obviously, the stop is the moment where he will be remembered for in Cleveland forever. The stop, for people not in Cleveland, like Mark, the stop is him guarding Stephen Curry 30 feet away from the basket, 25 feet away from the basket in Game 7 of the NBA Finals and shutting him down. He can't do that anymore, for sure. And there were moments throughout his career, even when he was in his prime, where he probably couldn't do that effectively, consistently. But in that moment, he locked him down, and got it done. Kevin Love's not that guy anymore, but Kevin Love is still shooting 35% from three, 89% from the line, averaging 8.7 rebounds in 20 minutes per game. That's still a useful rotation player, especially when you consider he's a really smart ball mover, really, really sharp passer. Teams that do need an offensive four-man, I think, will be helped by having Kevin Love out there.
Yeah, and I think, for like exactly like you're saying, I think fit's going to be really important for him for where he does go. And part of what makes me excited about, like, did we mention already Miami? Miami and Phoenix are the two teams that have been mentioned with him the most that I've seen reporting.
Which one of those two do you like better?
Miami, for sure. Like, I think it would be cool to see him in Phoenix, but I think for Miami, like, they're in an interesting spot because I think Orlando Robinson's done some nice things for them, but also I think it's just Kevin Love, even if he is a little bit shot. I don't want to say he's a clear upgrade, but I think that he gives them a different element that they don't really have. They haven't had it since Kelly Olynyk was there, and having that kind of pop threat, especially while being somebody who is a really good passer and screener and playmaker out of DHOs, and that fits what they do incredibly well. You can envision that opening things up and what they want to do in a meaningful way, especially because it's not like we've talked about before with Kevin Love. He's a shooter that you have to guard. It's not like you can just ignore him. Like, he's incredibly good at just being a productive flare guy, and like you can build him into sets and do a ton of read and react stuff with him that matters. And I think you can play him with Bam. Like, I think that's the biggest thing for me. Like,
yes,
right now, like you can play him with Bam without having to worry about any kind of spacing limitations. And I think defensively it's interesting-ish. Like, I think almost Miami might work better for him than anywhere else because they're just going to ask him to play zone. And I think that's probably what he's going to be most effective in right now. And mainly just because they have so many other smart defenders. And it is interesting because, like, Miami's a pretty small team, but again, playing his own, like, I do think that they can get away with some of that stuff, and he just boosts things for them offensively, and they need the offensive boost. So I would be very in love with that fit for them, and for him.
Well, and I would imagine Miami is the smallest team in the league, right? Just in terms of minutes played. If they're not, they're certainly up there. I mean, maybe the Lakers weirdly might be, just because they had so many of those minutes playing like 2 6'3" guys or shorter, 2 6'1" guys with Dennis Schroeder and Patrick Beverly, 3 at times, like 6'3" guys or shorter. So it's possible they're up there, but Miami is certainly one of the teams that plays smaller in the league. Having said that, they do have guys like Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, Caleb Martin. Haywood Highsmith is a really, really good defender. Like, I think that you can get away with pairing Kevin Love with those guys and making it work. What I would be worried about is a lot of Bam's minutes obviously come with Tyler Hero, and I don't know how I'd feel about Tyler Hero and Kevin Love on the court together in a playoff series. I think you would have to stagger those two rotationally and try and figure out a way to make it work. But I think that his overall intelligence level, his size, this is a team that's 27th in offensive rating in the NBA right now. They really just need to try something at the end of the day, right? They just need to see if they can find an answer in some regard. They're also 19th in offensive rebounding rate. Kevin Love isn't necessarily what he was. We were talking before we got on air about what Kevin Love was in Minnesota, right? Where he's averaging 15 rebounds a game and was one of the most fun rebounders in the league. He's not that guy anymore. But if you told him, hey, we need you to go in, we need you to try and crash the offensive glass, create a couple of free chances for us. He's so smart. His angles are so good. He's so intelligent. That could be a way for them to generate offense in a somewhat reasonable way.
Well, and part of what could be fun with that too, because something that they really don't have, it feels like maybe I'm over indexing, but it feels like every game there are 2 or 3 passes where they're trying to get Bam a post entry, and it is so telegraphed that it's turned over. I think if you add Kevin to that, Kevin's an awesome post entry passer, and then you can do a lot of really exciting stuff with high-lows, which they've already been doing in Cleveland a ton the last couple of years. And I think that adds an element that would be huge for Bam's game, because as much as Miami has struggled offensively, I think we could just continue to see Bam flourish and become a really capable half-court shot creator, which has been incredibly enticing. I think his dribble is just a little bit tighter. He has even more confidence and aggression in what he does. And again, I think just adding what Kevin could do would be that's exciting to me. And it definitely, I don't think that it quote unquote makes him some dominant title contender, but I think it adds an element that they don't have and strengthens them as they try and, climb up the standings as much as they can.
Yeah, I agree with you. The other team that you mentioned is Phoenix, and let's just transition to talking about Phoenix now. I am even more sold that team, or people that are talking in the media are kind of underestimating how impossible this Suns team is going to be to stop offensively. They're going to be so good when Kevin Durant starts playing basketball again. I don't know how you're going to find a way to slow them down, just given how multiple they're going to be offensively, with running Kevin Durant off of actions, having Kevin Durant spot up in the corner where Mikal Bridges used to be occasionally, having someone like Monty Williams draw up really creative opportunities where guys like Kevin Durant are coming up from the corner and running DHOs with, either Chris Paul, who's coming over and handing it off after initiating the action as he initiates the action, or DeAndre Ayton, who gets the ball out of a horns pass and then comes up and sets a dribble handoff screen for Kevin Durant. There are just so many different ways they're going to be able to beat you because Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, Devin Booker can all space the floor really well from 3. They can all create their own shot, and they're all killer mid-range shooters, and they're all good 3-point pull-up shooters. That's a lot of different pieces to stop while having to deal with all of it also in isolation and having to have 3 elite on-ball defenders basically on the court at once to not have a significant mismatch problem out there. Do you feel any more or less strongly about the Suns than you did before or when we podcasted? I guess that was a week ago now.
I think I feel about the same, and I don't mean that to be derogatory. I just mean more exactly what you're talking about. I saw automatically, I was like, you put those 3 guys together, hell yeah, man. More importantly, Josh Okogie is now just they traded Mikal Bridges to unearth Josh Okogie, and I mean he's scored I think 15 or more every single game since coming back from injury. Granted, it's been 4 games, but
I think he had 5 threes last night.
He had an out of body experience last night. They lost the game. I don't care. That was sick. I really enjoy watching that. He can never take the face mask off again. But point being, I think the game against And Sacramento was a really good indicator of like, that made me really think like, oh, wow, imagine adding Kevin to this. Like, I cannot wait to see that because you can make whatever you want out of Sacramento's defense. I think their biggest issue continues to be size. Like I don't think that their defense was like abysmal in that game. It was more, that was like the worst potential scheme matchup possible. Their whole defense is put 2 on the ball, and that opens up tons of shooting pockets for just in the mid range and in general for guys like Chris Paul, like Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, and they're just walking into 16 footers that end up being like contested, but for the most part, like that's stuff that you can't really, but also like that's like, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you build a defense around to be like, okay, well, we're comfortable letting somebody shoot 40% from there, but this team has that kind of otherworldly touch where it's not a bad shot. Like there's not really a good answer for them. And I think obviously they'll play better defensive teams, of course. I mean, as we saw with the Clippers last night. But I think to me, I just don't know what answers you're going to have against this team. Like, are you going to put 2 on the ball? Because I don't think that's going to work. Like, even with teams that have done that already, their 5th man has been like what I'm really interested to continue seeing, and this maybe is me nerding out too much. Like, I already know what I'm getting out of that top 3. I think I've been really impressed with DeAndre so far too, but like compared to what the rest of the season's been for him, it's been very up and down. But like they've really empowered Torrey Craig and Josh Okogie when they're on court in this like last week or so to just be like, okay, go crash the offensive glass because we know you're not going to guard anyways. With how much attention the other 3 are already receiving, like you're bound to get something easy there. So I just don't know what answers there are going to be. I'm very excited to see what this looks like. I know we were talking about Kevin Love. I'm not sure how to tie that back, but yeah.
Well, no, I mean, I kind of wanted to transition out of Kevin Love because I think that the things that Torrey Craig and Josh Okogie bring to the table are more valuable for this Suns roster than what Kevin Love would bring to the table. All due respect to Kevin Love, Torrey Craig is a very good defender of, 4s, can slide down to the 5 occasionally, also deals with bigger forwards like 3s well. Josh Okogie, I think, deals with backcourt players particularly well defensively. So what Phoenix can do essentially is there's been a lot of talk of who's going to be the 5th starter. Is it going to be Torrey Craig or Josh Okogie or someone they pick up off the buyout market? Is it going to be Terrence Ross? I think it's going to be one of Torrey Craig or Josh Okogie, and they're just going to be able to mix and match depending on what the matchup is night after night. Like, do you need to slow down an offensive initiator? Or are you playing Dallas, for instance? Well, if you're playing Dallas, you pick the one that you feel best about guarding Luka Doncic, and you go from there. If you're playing Sacramento, I start Josh Okogie because my goal is to slow down De'Aaron Fox and to annoy him and then be able to get some blows for Chris Paul and Devin Booker to where they don't have to guard him all the time. If it's the Los Angeles Clippers, I go with Torrey Craig because I would rather have Craig guarding one of Kawhi Leonard or Paul George. They're just going to be able to mix and match, I think, in such a substantially interesting way with that duo that does 2 things that are similar in role in that they're going to be a low usage defensive player, but different in the way it works out in practicality. And that's why I think I continue to really like this team, especially given it might just be that Josh Okogie like ends up being this guy that's averaging 20 points per game over his last 4 games. Now that he just has all the offensive space in the world,
it'd be the greatest. It would be so cool.
If that happens, I guess you have to start him. But I'm guessing that won't happen throughout the year. And I think it's just going to be able to really simple mix and match, right? I'm making it sound easier than it is probably, but it makes sense to me. Just mix and match.
I get exactly what you're saying. Cause like, if you add Kevin Love to this, there's no way you should start if we're being blunt. Like, I think the idea for me would be maybe he comes in and is their backup center or gives them some minutes there. Cause like, I do think that I don't want to say it's a weakness because I do think Jock Landale has done some good things this year, but I do think that in theory, if Kevin is healthy, or at least a little bit better than he's been earlier this year, even if he is the same player, like I do think you have some defensive deficiencies, but in the half court, I think that's a more productive offensive player than what Jock's been. So I would be interested, but I think, I'm very sold on Miami for them.
Yeah,
What did you
and
think
what I
of
will
Terrence
say
Ross
is,
getting 17 shots up last night?
well, I mean,
I loved it.
with
I'm so here
without
for it.
Kevin Durant, they probably need 33 shots on some level from Josh Okogie and Terrence Ross, right?
Mhm.
Because those it's not like they have a ton of scoring depth beyond Booker, Paul, and Ayton.
Oh,
And
for
Ayton's
sure.
just going to get his 12 or 13 every night,
Yeah.
right?
I
So,
had to get my shot. I love Terrence Ross. So it fits the bit so well of him coming in and taking 17 shots in his
yeah.
first game with the team.
Well, it does. And I think that he's a valuable pickup for them. They
Yeah.
needed bench scoring, and he will provide bench scoring for them in a pretty real way. Uh, the other point I do want to kind of bring up here is it seems very clear to me as well that Torrey Craig and Josh Koji are just going to be ahead of Darius Baisley in this as well. Uh, I think that it feels, I don't want to say clear, but it feels like the Saric for Baisley move was probably more of a luxury tax avoidance move,
Yeah.
which is reasonable. Like on their part, they needed to do something to reduce the tax bill after adding Kevin Durant and taking on a bit of money to do that. But Baisley was someone that we thought could provide some versatility, and maybe he can athletically at some point during the season. Maybe once he, gets ingrained there, learns the sets that they want him to run, everything like that. It's very possible he could help. But it does seem like Torrey Craig and Josh Koji are just straight up ahead, and it makes sense that they are because they've been there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they played 13 guys last night. Monty Williams came out after the game and said that he played too many guys, and Darius was the one guy he didn't play on the bench. So, yeah, I think that it feels pretty unlikely that we're going to see him unless some kind of injury happens.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on and talk about Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. Those two players will be playing together. Have you heard of that, Mark?
I mean, I hadn't heard about it, and then I turned on the fourth quarter of Mavs Wolves, and that was just that was special. Kyrie's fourth quarter was just like, I mean, that's the first time in Luka's career that we've seen somebody else take over in heat check time. But heat check time was for 12 minutes. Like that was kind of wild just watching like Luka. I mean, like he brought up the ball at some points, but like it was a lot of just give Kyrie the ball, man, and get the hell out of the way. Like there was really not any kind of plays being run, and that was what was so fun in watching it. It made me, in some ways, it made me feel all that more excited about the Mavs, and it also made me not that worried about the Wolves. Like I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, the Wolves are giving up this thing." I'm like, dude, you could put prime Ron Artest out there, and I don't think that we're getting stops right now. So like, just enjoy the game.
The thing with the thing I want to mention from that as well is just like Luka Doncic has never gotten an opportunity to essentially play 4-on-4, right? Because every time that Kyrie Irving is on the court, they've like put him in the corner a decent amount, actually. Like started him in the corner, maybe had him come up for dribble handoffs, or just like had him spot in the corner for possession sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
We've never seen Luka get a chance to play basically 4-on-4, where the man has to stay purely attached to a player that is as talented as Kyrie Irving, right? And having all of that extra space for Luka, and it will be more space for Luka, I think, is just very real. And then, oh, by the way, what you said happened against Minnesota, where Kyrie was just able to completely take over and dominate a game.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I really enjoyed watching that. Yeah, I think what I'm really interested to see is what they do defensively, because and I'm not trying to discredit people for how they felt, but I think there was a lot of, well, how are they going to play defensively? Like how can they hang on the court together? And I was like, they're 25th in defense this year, man. I could care less if we're being completely honest. Like,
no, I definitely care.
Well, I mean, like, no, I care, but the point is, like, okay, you're adding somebody who is one of the best shot creators and secondary scorers in the league, playing off of elite talent.
Yeah.
With what the defense has been already, it literally cannot be worse. Like, I'm automatically, I was like, okay, I'm throwing that out the window. And I think to me, what was most interesting in that game is watching what Jason Kidd really tried to do in that fourth quarter. Like they went super small. Like they were playing Josh Green at the 5. And so it was like Josh Green, Kyrie, Luka, Reggie Bullock was out there. I'm trying to remember who the fifth player was, but
Bullock was the fourth. I remembered. I can't
yeah.
remember who the fifth was.
I think, they were playing Theo Pinson at times. Like it was Theo Pinson and Frank Ntilikina were swapping on and off, which I love how randomly Theo Pinson went from just being bench guy to now being in the rotation, playing like 10 to 15 minutes a game. And he's been fine. Like it's always an experience watching him drive the basketball, but he makes plays. With whether they're positive or negative depends, but he always does it 100 miles an hour. But point being, like, it's not necessarily awesome defense, but it is better than what they were doing before. It's okay. Let's be active as shit. Let's try and be really aggressive. Try and force something. We know we're going to get killed on the glass. We can't really play any of our. Jason Kidd does not trust any of their bigs. For the most part.
Well, and for what it's worth, that's gonna change too, because they're gonna get Maxi Kleba back,
which I'm excited about that.
Maxi will change this in a pretty substantial way.
Yeah, but I'm just like, I'm very excited to see how they continue to try and figure things out defensively, because I did think, like, again, it wasn't great defense, but the activity was there, so I was encouraged. I was like, this is better than what I've seen from the Mavs all year. So.
Mark, what do you think Dallas's defensive rating is in the 58 minutes that Kyrie and Luka have played so far?
It's probably not very good.
It's 124.
Yeah, not good.
It's real bad. But look, it's small sample. They won't be that bad defensively, but they don't have answers yet. Like, Josh Green, I think, is a answer that will help them. Like, they don't have the answer, I guess is what I would say. They have an answer in Josh Green just being ready to play. Josh Green should be playing 28 to 33 minutes a night.
I wouldn't. Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't move him out of the starting lineup. I would keep him.
Yeah. Well, I'm at the point where I think Josh Green is. There is a non-zero chance Josh Green is their third best player. Are we there?
I'm trying to think. Would I be there yet? I mean, it's got to be close. Like, he's been really good. He's been really
basically
good
since he's been back from this little inactive like stretch that he had, where I can't remember what he did. How did he hurt himself?
I have no idea. If we're being
I can't remember. But he's been back for 15 games. He started 8 of them. He's averaging 13 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, while shooting 52% from the field, 38% from 3, 73% from the line. Has obviously been incredibly active defensively, has also been a real transition threat. And I think that's where I want to go with this next. Kyrie has already pretty quickly added a real dynamic for them in transition. This was a team, as we've talked about throughout the year, plays incredibly slow, right? They're a bit of a slog offensively from time to time. A lot of Luka ISO, a lot of Luka ball screens, a lot of pounding the ball into the ground for Luka. Kyrie is just going. Like, that's what he does. He is going to get the ball and he's going to attack in transition. He is going to fly up and down the court and try and get that easy bucket. He's smart about when to bring it out, and he will continue to, I think, adjust that, especially as they get into the playoffs and they need to play more half-court sets. But Kyrie is going. And the biggest thing that we talked about in terms of this deal that went like way under the radar is that Dallas has been abysmal in the non-Luka minutes this year, right? They've just been terrible. They were like -6.5 or something like that in non-Luka Doncic minutes prior to this trade. With Kyrie Irving on the court and with Luka Doncic off the court so far, Dallas is +8.5. Now, that's not going to hold. Like, they're not going to be a +9 team, which would be the best team in the league, without Luka Doncic with Kyrie Irving on the court. But if they're even, they're getting back like 3 points per game. And that's an enormous jump for a situation that's going to happen for 12 minutes a night, basically. If you're getting back 3 points in 1/4 of the game, you have made an enormous move even before we get to the dimension that Kyrie gives them offensively when he's on the court with Luka Doncic. It's an enormous, enormous, enormous addition for them. I'm all in on it, at least on offensive. I think that they're going to be great offensively. they do have real defensive things to figure out. And I think that Maxi Kleba's re-addition back into the fold following what I believe is a hamstring tear. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I think it was something like that.
Yeah. As soon as he gets back, I think that they're going to look a lot different defensively because they will have a big that they trust defensively to be able to switch, to be able to protect the weak side of the rim, to be able to just be available in help when someone like Kyrie inevitably gets beat off the bounce, because he will. And that's okay because he's giving you so much more offensively. But he's going to be there to clean up in a real way that Dallas doesn't even really have a cleanup person on defense right now.
Yeah, it's been rough. I agree. And I wasn't trying to skirt the defense too much, but I think again, it's more just seeing them be active is an upgrade. So I'm encouraged. But we're on the same track with that.
Okay. So let's go next. Let's just talk about the Wolves, because Mike Conley is obviously an enormous addition for the Wolves. And they're 1-2. Conley had a really bad game against Washington. Like, he went 0 of 6 from the field. He didn't score. Washington beat them. I think that they were at home for that game too. And I think that, like, there's been a bit of a slight overreaction. I think the process for the Wolves in those 3 games that Mike Conley has played, because I've watched them, it just looks better to me. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's been a much more intentional, without it feeling intentional, without it feeling like mechanical, ability to get Rudy involved. And it's important. Like, that's so key in them unlocking things. And I think that's parlayed with him playing better defensively too. So I think that's been key. What I'm most interested to see is what this continues to mean for Kyle Anderson. Like, and I don't mean that like you traded for Mike Conley because you need him to be the point guard, because as much as I love Kyle Anderson, like, him being their lead facilitator is going to have real issues in the playoffs. Like, I think I'm higher on Kyle Anderson as a playoff player than most, but like, as your lead guy, no, like that can't happen. But I think in terms of like how they continue to find that dynamic, while having to rework what their offense looks like, with him getting healthy again, because he's been out the last couple of games, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to pull up right now because I think he might have played last night, but he'd missed. Yeah. Never mind. He's played all the games with Conley. I'm misremembering. It's been a long week. Please forgive. But
he missed a couple games before that. Is what you're remembering.
Yes. I am just interested. Like, he still played well, but I think that I'm just interested to see how they continue to toy with that, because Chris Finch likes to mess around with things. I don't mean that in a bad way, but like, he likes to tinker. So I'm interested to see what that looks like.
Well, they're multiple in the ways that they can initiate the offense, but I will note, like, you brought up the idea of Mike Conley getting Rudy Gobert involved more. I think that's like unequivocally happening already. So in the minutes where Mike and Rudy have played together, they are a plus 7.1 in those minutes, and they are 1-2 in those 3 games, right? So they're playing really well with Rudy Gobert and Mike Conley together. It's just that they've just gotten destroyed in the other minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With Rudy, without Conley prior to this, throughout the entire season, they were negative 0.8. Rudy is averaging 2.5 more points per 100 possessions with Mike Conley on the court. He's getting his shots about half of a foot closer to the rim, which doesn't seem like much, but when you're going from taking them from 2 feet away to 1.5 feet away, it means you're getting more dunks. You're literally going 25% closer to the basket just by adding Mike Conley. That's actually a big thing. And I think it's why we've seen that Rudy's true shooting percentage is 5% better with Mike Conley than it was without Mike Conley this year. It's small sample, obviously, but again, this is about process, right? The process looks better, I think, for the Wolves in these 3 games in terms of getting Rudy involved. Now, what happens with Karl Towns is another question entirely.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's what's going to be fascinating about this in general. Like, you add that on top of, again, like because I'd imagine Kyle is going back to the bench when Cat comes back. So it's again like, okay, well, cool. You finally found things that are working, and now what? Like, how do you? I mean, because we've talked about this on the pod before. Just like, how do you reintegrate somebody like Carl? And again, like obviously Carl's all NBA talent, like he's a really good player, but after you've got these things that have made things more functional, like again, I think having Mike alongside Carl's huge, which is what like the best point guard that Carl's played with is Jeff Teague. So,
Played with Ricky, right?
oh wait, yeah, Jesus. Okay,
Yeah.
never mind. It was Ricky. No, that's not intended just Teague slander, but never forget when he was in Indiana and he thought that he deserved the most shots on the team when Paul George existed. But yeah, yeah, I think that I think Mike can do a lot that I'm interested to see alongside, like figuring things out with Carl and Rudy in those minutes. But it's just a really interesting dynamic to try and figure out with this team.
Yeah, is the best point guard that Karl Towns has played with Jimmy Butler? It's probably Jimmy, right?
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, just in terms of, playing off of somebody who actually collapses the defense in a real way and, is capable of making life easier. I mean, that year, Karl Towns averaged 21 and 12 and shot like 55, 42, 86. Like he was, that was a really, really good cat year. Yeah, I mean, look, and then like we haven't even gotten to the defense. This is just like the big questions that we've had about the Wolves the whole way. I think Mike Conley is going to make it easier on everybody. I think that's undeniable. And I think that ultimately it still comes down to whether or not you think Rudy Gobert and Karl Towns can play together. And that goes on both ends on some level, right? Like when you have Karl Towns posting up in the mid post, can you throw Rudy just in the dunker spot and make it work, right? Can you, when you have Karl Towns spacing from three, it works, but is Karl Towns going to be happy like spacing from three regularly? Probably not, but he is excellent at attacking closeouts and making passing reads on the move. So there's a lot that you can do. It's just making it so that everyone is happy. And oh, by the way, undeniably, this is now Anthony Edwards' team. He has taken a leap that he looks better right now over the course of this little 2-month period, I think, than Karl Towns ever did in terms of like translatable to real postseason success play. I would rather have this version of Anthony Edwards than any version we've seen of Karl Towns because I just buy Anthony Edwards to be able to create shots and to figure it out defensively in a way we haven't seen from Towns. So if you have to prioritize one guy getting the ball over the other, it's going to be Edwards. And then, oh, by the way, Mike Conley is going to have the ball, and Mike Conley is super unselfish, but like, I don't know. I don't know where Towns fits into this. And I know that he was really deferential early in the season. And I thought did a really good job of trying to get everyone involved. But is he going to be happy with that long term? Maybe he will be now that he has like the full extension in place and like he doesn't really have to worry about it anymore from that perspective.
Yeah, that's sneakily one of the more interesting dynamics to see over the next couple months is what that plays out like.
I don't know. I have no idea what it'll be.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I have no idea either, but it's like I don't want to be the person who has to figure that out because that seems like not my cup of tea.
And the good news is that Chris Finch, during his time in Denver, when he was, I don't want to say he's the guy that unlocked Nikola Jokic. I think Nikola Jokic unlocked Nikola Jokic, but he's the one that really figured out a lot of the creative stuff to do in order to get Jokic in better positions. And he's been pretty creative since he's been in Minnesota. I really have liked what Chris Finch has done this season. This Minnesota team is not perfect, and yet they sit here at the All-Star break and they're 31-30 after a really bad start where they had no idea really how to make it work with Gobert and Towns. And then Towns goes out and you think that you're losing one of your best players and they go on a run. Chris Finch is extremely creative in the way that he goes about figuring things out. If anyone can do it, it's him. It's just a lot to figure out. It might not work.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's take a quick commercial break here. And then we're going to jump in to the Brooklyn Nets, who have been a very strange team to watch. Okay, let's get back into this. The Brooklyn Nets, they're sitting at 1-2 as well since moving Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant both. They had a close loss to Philadelphia the first game. I think it was like 101 to 98, 97, something like that. Then they got blown out by the Knicks because the Knicks are apparently a super team that is blowing everybody out now. There's just not really another way to look at it. And then the Mikal Bridges breakout game against Miami, where he dropped 45 and was totally dominant in substantial ways. What have been your impressions of the Brooklyn Nets thus far, Mark Schindler?
I mean, I think they've been it's been fun just to see all these guys in a new place. Some of the lineups that they've gotten to run out, like it's the kind of stuff that you put together in a 2K draft. Like, I mean, their starting lineup like Spencer, DFS, Mikal, Cam, and Clax. Like, it's fun to watch, but also I think when you're talking about like,
this is the most Mark Schindler 2K draft team I think that's ever existed, by the way.
I have some absolutely sicko things I used to do in 2K, so you don't even want to hear. But like, yeah, I mean, I think they've been fun to watch. We'll talk about Mikal in a second, but I think from an actual team process standpoint, like, I think the defense is cool, but also you see some limitations with it. Because outside of Mikal, I don't think that they have like true, really good on-ball stoppers. Like, defense is fine. Like, I think, again, like I think they'll continue to be a pretty solid defensive unit under Jacques Vaughn with what they've done this year. Offensively, the transition stuff is really fun. Like, when they can get into early offense, it looks really good. I think the issue is just always going to come down to half court with what this group is right now. Like, we've seen what offenses look like with Spencer at the head, and that's not to be, unfair to him, but there's levels to it. And I think that we've seen it already when this team is getting bogged down in the half court. It can be a little bit tough. Like, I tweeted something out when the first starting lineup got announced. I was like, this team's going to lead the league in potential assists, or not potential assists, secondary assists. And then somebody like followed up like, yeah, but who's getting the actual assists? And I was like, yeah, that's a great question because I don't know. And that plays out. Like, they pass a lot. They pass a lot, and
they pass a lot around the perimeter.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, a lot of their looks are coming out of, okay, pass the ball, try and get something going side to side. And yeah, I mean, we've seen teams like that, and it's, again, like, I don't think anybody's expecting this team to be like a real contender in the playoffs, but that's what they're at team wise right now. But against Miami Heat, Mikal Bridges just did something. And like, that was exciting. Like, he's shown stuff all year. Like, I think he'd really made real strides in Phoenix that had kind of gone under talked just because of what Phoenix was for dealing with the injuries. But that fourth quarter against Miami, when he's just getting the ball in isolation and just getting told, okay, do stuff. And there are some bad shots mixed in there for sure. But then, okay, what about the three where he's hitting a fader like right over Jimmy Butler, or where he's getting to the rim after crossing Jimmy Butler? Like, that's the stuff where I think it makes you rethink a little bit of what his ceiling can be, because he's getting opportunities that just were frankly never going to be there in Phoenix to get to this next level.
Yeah, it's interesting. So a team, there were reports that teams offered them like 3 or 4 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges. And I think that was smart by those teams. And I think I don't know what I would have done if I was Brooklyn. I'd need to know the protections on the picks. I would imagine there were some protections on them. But I saw like Kendrick Perkins kind of get absolutely obliterated for saying that the Phoenix Suns held back Mikal Bridges. And I disagree with Kendrick Perkins on many basketball takes, probably most basketball takes. I don't know if I totally disagree with this. I think that, like, you can't say that the coaching staff held him back or that he wasn't developing in Phoenix. Like, you could see it this year, like you said. I think something like 30% of his field goals this year unassisted, which is like a career high that is pretty drastic because they really used them to initiate a lot when Devin Booker and when Chris Paul missed time, right? So I think that it's not that he was held back developmentally, it's that the situation didn't give him a ton of opportunities to really rock, right? And that's okay. It's not what they needed him to do. It's not what he shouldn't be getting possessions to rock over Chris Paul and Devin Booker, right? Those guys are two all NBA players. But I do think that now we're going to get a chance to see Mikal Bridges blossom and grow. And I think he has some real shit to him off the bounce. I really do. I always have. I've always liked the way he plays side ball screens, particularly. Like if he takes a dribble handoff coming up from the corner, if he takes, just a straight side pick and roll off of a secondary pass from Chris Paul, I think he really knows how to operate in those scenarios. I think that he's probably going to average over 20 points per game is where I'm at. Like right now he's averaging 25 in these 3 games because of the enormous breakout, like 45-point game against Miami, where he was just like attacking Jimmy Butler and like going for it and it ruled. But I think that he's got real offensive game to him. And I think the time in Phoenix playing with Chris Paul, playing with Devin Booker, playing in an offense led by Monty Williams, I think it helped develop him. And I think that they didn't hold back his development. It's just that he didn't get a ton of reps.
Yeah.
And he's going to get the reps now.
I'll be more crass with this one, just in being frank. Like, they were not holding him back at all. Like, that is
not really.
That's a bullshit take. Like,
I think that this year where he proved that like he could take some stuff on, like he probably wasn't getting as much of an opportunity as he could have been.
I mean, exactly.
But also, like, and even last year, too.
Yeah, but point being, like you mentioned, like Devin Booker was on the team all last year. Chris Paul is still there this year. He's not being held back. Like, I think in terms of anything, like looking at his development, like I think this is a testament to what his development has been. Like, this is, to me, I think this is such a great example of pointing and being like, okay, we're going to give you 35% usage and figure it out. And we're going to bring you along slowly and continue to incorporate you into sets and get things figured out. And like, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way for doing it, but I think often the only idea for development is the first option of, okay, give this guy a ton of usage, let him run ball screens and see what happens. Like, that really just doesn't work for everybody. Like, it's too much. Like, anytime I talk to players, like I think one of the best things I've ever been told is like a player, was very good now. They were like, one of the worst things that I ever did was telling myself I need to improve at every single thing. Like, they had to really be like, I have to deconstruct it. I have to do one thing at a time, because if I get good at this one thing, it opens up 3 other things for me, and then you can continue doing it. And it's like, again, player development is not one size fits all, but it's not as simple as saying, let me rock in isolation. Like, I needed to get that off because God.
No, and I agree with you on that. And like I said, like I don't think that they held back his development at all. I think that the way that they developed him played a critical role in what he is now. And I think he is someone that like can play secondary reps on the ball. Like if I told you he turned into like a Chris Middleton-y scorer, would that surprise you at this point?
Probably not. Like, I think that's definitely possible. Like, he's got,
I think it's on the table.
I think what's exciting is that he'd just be different in terms of what he can do getting to the rim already. Like, he's better at getting to the rim and being shifty than Chris has ever been. So I think that is a really interesting dynamic too. I don't know if he'll ever have like quite the same ability of contested shot making with what Chris has had from from his post up ability and the way that he's able to operate in tight spaces. But definitely.
Yeah, different scorers for sure. It wouldn't surprise me, honestly. Like, Mikal has all of the tools to be like a really interesting mid-post scorer, just in terms of super high release point, like pretty strong, wiry strong through his base to be able to like hold that position. There's some real upside there. It's just like there was never a point for Phoenix to do that, right? There's never a reason for Phoenix to consider doing that. It's just different. Like, and I'm very intrigued by Mikal. Like, I'm at the point where I don't know. I don't know if Memphis was the team that offered 4 first-round picks. I saw that like some people speculated maybe that it was Memphis. I don't know if that was actually reported. Did you see that?
I don't think I saw a report anywhere.
Yeah. But if I was Memphis, I would offer a crazy amount of like draft capital for Mikal Bridges. It just completely out of pocket, insane amount for Mikal. He fits everything that they're looking for, right? I think he can be a legit secondary creator. I think he'd be the exact player they want defensively to be able to take on tough assignments from John Morant. Like it fits across the board, right? But if you're Brooklyn now, you have Mikal Bridges on what, a 3.5-year deal that is going to turn out to be one of the absolute best contracts in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
He is making what, 21 million, 22 million over the course of the next 3 years. It's going to be an incredible contract. He's the guy that you build around there, I think, right?
Yeah, or at least he's a super integral part of what they're doing. So yeah. I concur.
What have you thought of Cam Johnson thus far?
I don't have any like extra Cam thoughts. I think he's been Cam. Like I don't think that I feel like, I've always loved Cam. Like I really like his game. I love what he brings. It's hard to find players who shoot as like he hasn't shot well yet. In Brooklyn, I think he will. But it's cool because he's getting a little bit more usage too, which that's exciting to me because frankly, like this team is going to play with a lot more pace than the Suns do, which I think fits Cam really well and opens up the idea of more of those secondary ball handling opportunities, which he's really capable of. Like he's a much better passer than I think his assist numbers indicate. Like he really sees the court well. He makes good reads. He has pretty good ball placement. A lot of it's just his handle and burst aren't like awesome. So I think not that they're obviously a lesser extent than what it would be with Mikal, but I think that there's again like maybe there's another like level of him becoming more of a plus starter if he can continue to add some things to his game.
So Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges have played, I think it was like 40 minutes. I'll look it up while we're talking. What do you think the plus minus is per 100 possessions for Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson playing together right now?
Like plus 12. That probably doesn't. Yeah.
No, it is. It's like plus 11.3. It's plus 11.3. Yeah. They've been awesome together for Brooklyn so far. They played 70 minutes together. 121 offensive rating, 109.5 defensive rating. They've been really, really good together. It's interesting, though. They obviously go out and they get Dorian Finney-Smith and Spencer Dinwiddie. The minutes with Mikal and Dorian together have not been very good. They're like +3 or -3 or something in those minutes. So it is kind of, it's a bit strange to figure out. They're going to have to mix and match, I think, a lot of different lineups here moving forward, because you would think in theory that Dorian Finney-Smith and Mikal Bridges, especially if Mikal is going to be like a legit secondary scorer who can average 20 points per game, they would fit really well together because Mikal can defend perimeter players, point of attack defenders. Dorian Finney-Smith is a terrific defender of bigger wings. I think he deals with those guys a little bit better than point of attack defenders. It should be like a really, really good combination together. And it might be, and oh, by the way, like Cam Johnson could fit like right in between them as the 3-man there. If you think you can slide with Mikal playing as like the 2, but they need a guy. Like they just need a primary guy in some way that makes it work. And I like Spencer. I think he's a really good player. He's like a definite starting quality player in the NBA. It's just they don't have the guy in what is a star-driven league now in today's league.
Definitely.
So yeah, I mean they're gonna have to go out and get that guy, and I don't know how they're gonna do it. That's kind of the problem with this roster alignment now, right? Because they don't have their own picks. They have all these other Phoenix picks, and maybe Phoenix bottoms out at some point. But by the time the picks that they get from Phoenix bottom out, you're going to be in a situation where Mikal has 2 years left on his deal? No, 1 year left on his contract. by 2025. So, the timeline's not adding up. In addition to what they have to do is going to create for a very difficult situation for Sean Marks to manage now, I think. And I will be fascinated to see what they do this offseason.
Yes, I agree. They're in an interesting spot. They have a lot that they can do. A lot of guys who are movable. I do want to say though, I've seen stuff about like the idea of moving on from Nick Claxton, and I just I'm so far away from that. He's been so good this year. I get the idea of like,
well, they have everything to insulate him now. Like,
yeah,
you have the 3 perimeter shooters around him that are exactly what he needs.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're gonna actualize Nick Claxton, that's what you want, and you want just like a big guard, right? I think that people like are hung up on the Ben Simmons thing, and I talked about Simmons on the last podcast. I don't need to really do it again. It's a bummer, but for instance, Patrick M in the comments brings up Zach LaVine for Ben Simmons swap with picks going to Chicago. I don't know, man. That's like not a disaster to me. Depend on how many picks and like what the protections are on the picks, but
I'd need to think about it more, to be honest. I just don't know I don't know how to feel about the whole situation with that. Maybe we'll have to do a pod on that sometimes. The whole situation with Ben is just like, it's difficult.
Yeah. It sucks. What I came down to on the pod with Spins over the week was, this just sucks. Like this is not fun to watch.
I just don't like talking about it because of where it tends to go, and I don't want to invalidate anybody's feelings about it, but I tend to just generally very much dislike how people approach it. So
yeah, I agree.
I just hope Ben can get to a place where he's happy again.
Oh, and trust me, like one thing I talked about on the pod on Wednesday with Spins was like, there was I get it way worse than you do over here. There's like a cottage industry to try and tear down Ben Simmons here. There was an article in News Corp where it was like, Ben Simmons commits the cardinal sin of basketball by passing up a layup again. It's just like, what are we doing? It was like a semi-contested layup that he probably should have taken.
Same thing to me is like and I get like fans are always going to be upset when their team loses, but like if somebody quote unquote travels on a shot on the last play of the game, I just don't care if the shot goes in and it doesn't get called. Like, yeah. I'm not the ref. Like, no. The basketball is too fun and too cool and awesome and enjoyable to get like that. And you know what? If that makes me a naive little child, I am happy to do that because the game's great and it's done a lot for me. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm gonna stick with it.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, they need somebody, the Brooklyn Nets, to be able to put pressure on the rim, to create shots, something along those lines. I don't know if the answer is Zach LaVine. Frankly, it's probably not Zach LaVine.
Yeah.
But there's something, they need someone to do that because as soon as they get that guy, this roster makes so much more sense. Yeah. It's kind of like what happened with Toronto. As soon as they got Kawhi, the roster made a million times more sense. As soon as this Nets team gets that guy, they're going to be pretty ready to contend. It's just that guy is also the hardest guy to get in the NBA. So how do you do it?
Yeah.
And that's why the Nets are in a really tough spot now. Okay. Next up, let's just kind of buzz through some of these. So the New York Knicks have decided to go like obliterate every single team since acquiring Josh Hart. Do you know what the Knicks offensive rating is in minutes with Josh Hart right now?
Probably like north of 120.
Higher. Keep going.
North of 130.
Keep going.
Oh shit! Like 140.
Yeah, 147 right now.
That's crazy.
Do you know what it is in minutes with Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart?
Oh man, it's probably enough to give Jay Wright a heart attack, like 170. Like it's got to be really damn good because Jalen has been absurd like the last week or so. More importantly, I tweeted this out first night of the Josh Hart experience. Damian Lillard is sitting on his couch watching League Pass, disgusted at Josh Hart deciding to shoot threes again. Like I mean, like, it's
Yeah.
crazy. Like, I've never seen a player completely just flip switch like that from not
So,
wanting to shoot to like,
yeah.
here I am, I'm taking threes again. And it's like, he's taking threes off the dribble. It's not just like, I mean, he's looking like he was when he first got to Portland last year, which Jesus Christ, that feels longer than a year ago.
Yeah.
But it's just overall, like, obviously he's not going to shoot 62% from the field, 64% from three the rest of the year. That doesn't happen. But like as we talked about earlier, the process has been awesome from him. Like, he fits so much. Like, you can just obviously just like the grit grind, Tibbs play balls to the wall all the time mentality. He fits that, but like with what they actually want to do of like, okay, drive, kick, read, react, play very basic basketball, but play it at 105%. He's so good at that. Like, that is what makes him a really good player. And this has been just a joy to watch. I mean, he's one of, tells you who I am as a person, but he's one of my favorite players in the league. And this
Totally
just
agree with you.
ratchets that up even farther. It has been like a match made in heaven. He's played 78 minutes in 3 games already while coming off the bench. Yeah. So yeah, you can tell how Tibbs feels about this.
Yeah. Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson have played 49 minutes together. They have a 42 net rating. They are scoring 1.6 points per possession in those minutes. That breaks my brain in so many real ways. I think what happened with Josh Hart in Portland, this is kind of my read on it. Not doesn't come from enough people that actually know, but I've kind of floated it to some people, and they wonder if this is true as well. The idea is that Hart knew he was the 5th option in Portland and specifically decided to take a step backward so that Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons, Jeremy Grant, Yusuf Nurkic would get the shots, right? He thought that it was a better offensive situation for the team if those guys were shooting.
Mm-hmm. I wish that Chauncey Billups had told him he was wrong, because if that's true, yeah.
For what it's worth, like, Chauncey in public was saying, like, we need to get Josh to shoot these open threes, right? So I think that he was. But that's my read, is that Josh Hart is just a very unselfish person in those minutes, and he was taking on a ton of defensive like equity, right? He had to guard the hardest person on the opposing team every night. So I think he used all of his energy to rebound, to try and guard on ball against very difficult players every single night, and just let his offensive role slide because they had all the offensive guys in the world to around him in order to rock, right? Yeah. And in New York, where he's in a bench unit where he can pair with Emmanuel quickly and get more shots, and pair with Jalen Brunson occasionally and get more shots, I think that he's opening up again. And obviously he's shooting like 1,000,000,000% from 3 right now, and that won't hold. But just the confidence. If he's going to shoot threes, he's a super valuable player because he can take on tough defensive assignments. He's a great rebounder. He's a playoff player if he shoots threes and like makes 36% of them. He's typically a 34% 3-point shooter. If he makes 36% of them, with how gritty he is, with how tough he is, with how he rebounds, with how he defends on the ball, makes high-level passing reads as well. Like, that's another thing. He can attack closeouts and hit kickouts. That's why, for instance, his assist rate, I believe, was pretty high this year, if I remember correctly. Like, he was averaging 3.9 assists per game, which was, after last season, a career high. Outside of last season, a career high. So it's a perfect addition. This is exactly what I thought Josh Hart was going to be. It's why I loved it and why we talked about it. This is basically my favorite move of the deadline outside of the star moves. It's a perfect fit across the board, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. It's been a blast to watch. I'm excited for more of it.
Yeah. Okay. I don't want to talk a ton about Jakob Poeltl. I want to give you the floor to talk about Jakob Poeltl. If you want to listen to my thoughts on it, I talked with Samson Folk over on Thursday, I believe that was. We dove deep into everything there. I want to give Mark the floor to talk about Jakob, because Jakob Poeltl is a Mark Schindler kind of guy.
That's true. Part of the reason I love this is like sneakily. God, I say sneakily all the time. I gotta improve my lexicon, but like
Low key, baby.
low key, yeah. The Raptors have been a pretty bad screening team the last couple of years. Like they really don't screen very well to open things up. And I think adding a player like Yak is huge in that. And so like we talked about on our pod, and I haven't gotten to listen to the one with Samson yet, but I'm sure you guys talked about how like one of the things to notice and like look forward to is like, what does this look like for Scotty being, less of a screener and moving off the ball again? I mean, moving back onto the ball a little bit more. What does that mean? But I think there was a lot of reticence with that before, like when the trade happened. But even now, like I think there's already really exciting stuff with Scotty and Jakob and pick and roll. Like, yeah, teams are going to switch it, but Jakob's been destroying switches already, which I felt he was going to be capable of doing because, especially with Scotty, I think he was going to he's had smaller players guarding him a lot of this year and just sagging off. But now, okay, if you're going to switch that, like against Orlando, they switched Markelle Fultz onto Jakob multiple times, and he just hit like a 12-footer over them. Like, okay, cool, I'll hit touch shots all day. But again, it's just the screening and the capability that he has on the roll as both a really quick decision maker and somebody who can just operate as a hub in the middle of the floor. Something they haven't really had since Marc Gasol. So I think that's been really key. I'm interested to see what more of it looks like. He's shown some really good stuff and just doing things with Pascal and Scotty that I really like even just moving the ball to cutters. Like it's been huge. Like it's been very nice to see. Defensively, I think I would like to see them get a little bit more conservative and play him in a deeper drop. They've been much more wanting to play him close to the screen. I think he's good at it. He's capable of doing it. You get to have Precious Achiuwa roaming backline, which that's exciting. I think even with them still being aggressive, like it gives them more of a safety net, just having Jakob being big and in the way and in the right places. So Nick Nurse is never going to change that. I don't think, unless like he has some come to Jesus moment, which I just don't know if he's capable of. So I would imagine this is what it's going to continue to look like. I've been encouraged by it. Also too for Fred, like I think this is really big for Fred VanVleet, getting somebody who can screen him open the way that he's been able to. And just having somebody who is going to, like, yes, he's not a shooter, but I think he carves out more interior space than he's going to get. He ever really gets credit for because of how effective he is as that floater touch guy and somebody who can be savvy as a screener. So I've really liked what I've seen so far. I think Malaki Flynn has looked good in some opportunities with him as well. This is the first real big that Malaki Flynn's gotten to play with, or positive offensive big that Malaki Flynn's gotten to play with, I should say. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it right now. I think it's the other thing that I would add to, I know it was really long-winded, but there was like a lot of idea of like, oh, well, I just want them to tank this year and bottom out. And like, I get that. I get wanting to be deeper in this draft or to not give up future picks. But I think I don't think that it's bad pick equity that they gave up. Like, I'm not super worried about it. This team has no intentions of going backwards. When you get a guy like Scotty, I think, not to say like they're contending now or anything, but you're in an odd spot of like, I don't really think you can go backwards when you get a guy like that. When you're trying to, it's hard to, I should say, like maybe you can, but I think it's really hard.
I think this was their opportunity to, if they were going to do it. I think this deadline was their chance to, but
I mean, like going forward is what I'm trying to say. Like, I think if you're getting into year 3 and you've been like a pretty steady-ish good team or decent team, it's hard to just be like, okay, well, we're going to go lose 20 games now. Like, that's really hard to tell that player and like get them to be on board with that. So I think to me, this is more about they're keeping their options open for what they can do and set the market in summer. Because I still think they're going to move some guys. But also like you add a positive player right now who helps the development of that guy that you just drafted in a spot you're probably not going to get back to drafting at. Like everything that they're doing right now is built around Scotty and then improving from there on out. So I think when you add a guy who is just now getting into his prime that they're likely to re-sign in the offseason and is going to be supplemental to developing him. Like, think about all the guards who have developed really well in San Antonio because of Jakob Poeltl. Like, DeJounte Murray had a career year and continued to improve because of Jakob. Like, obviously, he put in all the work himself. I'm not just trying to make it about Jakob, but like having a guy who is steady on both ends and can play a two-man game with you on both ends is really important in developing guards. And I think if you want to get the most out of Scotty's guard skills, having a guy like Jakob is really important for that. So I liked the move from them.
Yeah, I liked it. I want to see where they go. And that's kind of what we talked about on, Wednesday, Thursday with Samson, just because like, I don't know. You could sell me on like a number of different directions for them. I have no idea what they're going to do. And that's what makes them like the most interesting team building team in the league right now, just because there are a number of different avenues that they could take. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you brought up the idea of Jakob being like in the middle of their offense and being like a short roll guy, because I think that what they've looked best at this season is offensively kind of when they use Scotty in that role. And that's obviously not what Scotty's role is going to be long term. I think they think he's going to hopefully be more of a focal point, a hub offensively that can score at a really high level and can be like your 20.7 assists per game guy. And I think he has that upside at some point. I would rather go get someone like Jakob that can help him reach that goal as opposed to like shoehorning Scotty into maybe what his role is best at now, where he can get into the interior of the defense, kind of rip them like from the inside out with his passing ability and with his short roll, like driving ability, and go from there. So I think that developmentally, it's really going to help them as well.
Yeah, 100%. So like, exactly. Like, cause I think it's tough because it's not it's not like sexy in terms of, we're getting, this guy that we're not getting like the number 7 pick or number 8 pick or whatever. And I do like, again, like there are real trade-offs with that, but also again, it's a long-term move still with the idea of improving Scotty. So yeah, I'm excited to see how it continues to play out.
Any other big names? We should talk about the Blazers and what they've looked like, right, since making these moves, because obviously a bit polarizing what they did. I didn't like it. I'll say that. I think Blazers fans are hoping that it will work out. I haven't really liked what I've seen, if I'm being completely honest. I know that Matisse Thybulle played really, really well in that first game. I'm just very skeptical about this wing core being enough to kind of make it work around the guards and around Yusuf Nurkic.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this was an automatic. Not that they like sold out on this year, but
yeah,
it's not like, I don't know. I appreciate that Cam is coming in and like he does something for them that I think is important, like just having a guy who will shoot it. Like that was their issue with Josh, was like, we need you to shoot the basketball. And like, I appreciate you bringing that up because I do think that there's credence to that, but like, I do think they continue to need guys who can be just good and capable shooters off the aim. So far, Cam has been, and based on NBA sample, I question what the 3 is going to look like continuing moving forward, but I'm hopeful for him. I've always been somebody who is interested by Cam and what he can do. I think the defense from him has been solid so far. Like, again, just being big and he's always been like, it depends on what you're asking him to do. But with Matisse, I'm in the same boat. Like that first game, cool to see him let it fly. I need a much bigger sample size before I'm ready to be in on that. Because
did you watch the Washington game?
I did not watch the Washington game, but I know he was not good in the Washington game.
He wasn't very good. Cam scored 18 in that game, but I didn't think he was very good defensively in that game either. Kyle Kuzma got loose for like 33. Part of this was that Porzingis is just such a ridiculous marginal advantage against Drew Eubanks, just because Eubanks is small. Is good, like as nice of a story as I think Drew Eubanks is, he's like a good energy backup center, right? And playing him 25 minutes a night or whatever they have to play him right now is just not going to go well. Here's the problem that Portland's going to run into. let's say Cam Reddish and Matisse Thybulle play well the rest of the year. Do you know what you have to do this summer? You have to pay them.
Yeah.
Because they're restricted free agents. That seems bad to me. That seems like a very risky endeavor to me that could result in very real problems for your organization moving forward in terms of overpaying players. So these are the situations that good organizations tend to avoid. Getting players right before their extension or free agency eligible. You know, they got the first round pick in the Cam Reddish deal. I don't think they're necessarily beholden to him, but if he goes out and averages 15 points per game, you probably sign him at that point, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm probably less worried about the money because I don't frankly think either guy's going to command very much based on what it feels like their market was, especially with Cam. Like, no offense to Cam, but like I don't think I even see a team paying the MLE for Cam right now.
Yeah. I think Matisse is going to get 8 figures a year.
Really? Wow.
He's 2 times all defense. I
That's
think he's going to get 8 figures a year.
Yeah, I would disagree heavily with any league person who does that, but get your money, man.
I disagree with you too. I don't think I would pay him that for what it's worth.
Yeah.
But
I didn't mean it for you. I just mean like if somebody does that, oof. But yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting bet. Like, hopefully it pays out. I just like I don't want to like automatically discount everything that they're doing, but I don't know how teams trying to thread needles like this typically just does not work very well.
Yeah.
Of trying to be, well, we're having, we want to keep our youth together and keep that core going. Well, we also have this all NBA player who, is having like arguably the best season of his career. Well, we want to try and blend the two of those together. And you never know how health is going to go. You never know what development's going to look like and how things are going to play out. And as much as I am excited about what Shaedon can be, as much as I like Anthony Simons, like I don't think that, to me, that is enough to warrant what they've done with Dame here. And granted, Dame's played a part in that as well. Like, he's wanted to stay in Portland, but I'm curious to see how it plays out. But I'm not very encouraged right now.
Well, let's be clear. This has been the best season of Damian Lillard's career so far. Straight up. It has been. He's averaging 31.4 points, 7.3 assists, shooting 47% from the field, 37% from 3 on 11 3-point attempts per game, 91% from the line. He has a 64.8 true shooting percentage. Yeah, that's a career high. Everyone's true shooting percentage is up this year, right? It's actually the highest true shooting percentage plus he's ever had, according to Basketball Reference, which is true shooting percentage compared to league average.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the best that Damian Lillard's ever looked. Point blank. It is the best. He is shooting better from the foul line than ever. He has a higher effective field goal percentage than he has at any point of his career outside of 2020. It's absolutely ridiculous. And on top of it, he's having his best finishing year of his career. It's remarkable what he's been able to do. And this team has no chance defensively when I watch them. They just don't have a chance. And that's before Yusuf Nurkic gets back. And he's been the root of their defensive problems a lot of the time this season. So, yeah. The NBA is not a league of half measures. That's what it comes down to. The NBA is not a league of half measures. You are rewarded for making full-scale decisions. Going all in like Phoenix did, going all in like the Milwaukee Bucks did in the Drew Holiday deal, going all in like the Golden State Warriors have when they could have decided to move on from this core. They could have decided to move on from this core multiple times. Klay Thompson got hurt and missed 2 years. Draymond Green had multiple contracts where they could have let him go because he was getting older. They paid $500 million to keep this core together, and they were rewarded with an NBA title last year.
Yeah.
Even on the other side of it. On the other side of it, the Thunder are being rewarded for going the other way. The Philadelphia 76ers were rewarded for, the process, essentially, because they have Joel Embiid now. So you are rewarded for going full measures. The NBA is not a league of half measures.
Yeah. I agree. I just hope that I want to be optimistic about Portland. I struggle to be right now. So hopefully
I want to
soon.
be optimistic about them too, because Dame is one of my favorite players to watch in the NBA. I love him. He is awesome. It's hard to be optimistic about them right now.
Yeah.
You said you haven't watched James Wiseman yet. Maybe we'll do a later pod, like maybe in like 2 or 3 weeks, on what we think of the Wiseman experience. I will note that I thought it was a lot of the same that we saw in Golden State in those 20 minutes he played against Boston. Scored very effective offensive roller and rim runner and transition threat because of how fast he is and just how much ground he can cover, and how much ground he can cover vertically as well, just getting and high pointing the ball better than anybody else. I did not really see anything defensively, and I don't really expect to the rest of the year, because this infrastructure defensively is just very bad. Is there any other trade deadline acquisitions that you want to talk about?
No, I think I'm good on that. Because I mean, I'm sure we'll talk more about the Lakers as things go on.
I guess we haven't talked about the Lakers, have we?
I'm okay with that, man. Like
I think we have to talk about the Lakers, Mark. I'm sorry.
Do we? I don't mean to seem like a Laker hater. I just am tired. Like, dude, they're in 13th, and we keep getting playoff graphics for them. Like, come on, bro. I will say, in watching their game against New Orleans, like that was the first time this season, and honestly, in the last 2.5 years, that I've watched this team and gone like, yeah, they have real versatility in their roster. And that was cool to watch because like you could really see them start to like try and pick on things and try and find some avenues to attack some of New Orleans' smaller players. So it's like, okay, well, we're getting overplayed a little bit. So what if have Rui Hachimura duck in and because he has a small on him and get him the ball, and they did that 2 or 3 times. And like D'Lo has been really good for them just off the ball, playing as a combo guard, shooting, like he's doing the things that they need. Jared Vanderbilt, you know me, I love Jared Vanderbilt. Like he does all the things that I absolutely enjoy about basketball. And I think he's been a perfect fit for them energy wise, defending everywhere, doing his short roll stuff, having a little bit of the handling. I'm interested to continue to see how they play him and AD together because they've been willing to do that so far. I don't have like super concrete takes on what they look like together yet. I want to have, some more tape on that before I get where I'm at with them, especially because AD he had a weird week, man. I don't want to be too harsh, but that was a very bad week of basketball from him. But yeah, I mean, like they have like a real rotation now. Malik Beasley is fit in. He hasn't even shot well yet, and I think he just has gravity, which matters. So yeah, I'm Laker curious. I am not ready to be Laker aggressive yet.
Yeah, I almost want to avoid this in large part just because like LeBron has been out, right? Like there's no real like up until that game against New Orleans, like we're working with like a 29-minute sample here outside of LeBron. Like, they look great together. And part of what we talked about with D'Angelo Russell is that I think that LeBron and D'Angelo should work really well together because LeBron can initiate and D'Angelo can just go play, right? And I thought in that Pelicans game, we saw like what the best circumstance of that is with D'Angelo Russell. He got to the line a ton. I thought that like his passing was really, really good. Just kind of creatively, right? Like it didn't feel like he felt like he had to get everybody involved. It felt like he was just playing and just going and just reading what the defense presented him. And that's where he's really, really good, is when he can do that. And I mean, here's the other thing, like we're talking about Anthony Davis having like a terrible, like weird week. Anthony Davis had like 28, 12 and like 5 assists in that Pelicans game and was like killer, right?
Yeah, he was really. Yeah, I didn't mean to be unfair towards him. He was really good in the Pelicans.
You're not wrong for what it's
just,
worth.
Yeah,
like,
from OKC to Portland, watching him, I'd imagine there was probably something going on off the court. I don't want to speculate, but yeah, that was some weird basketball from him compared to how good he's been this year in general too. But yeah, I come away pretty optimistic just because of how pessimistic I was earlier in the year and how different the roster is. So yeah, I mean, I have positive takeaways.
What are your thoughts on what this team's starting lineup should end up being?
I think they should start Vando. I think it's LeBron, D'Lo. I probably Austin Reeves, Vando, and AD. That's probably where I would go. I don't know if that's where they're gonna go. I don't really like. I guess they like starting Rui so that LeBron doesn't have to be the 4. I guess that's fine. I'm just like, I'm not like Rui's biggest fan. I think he's been done okay in Los Angeles, and he's had some nice moments. With his player archetype, it's hard. So I guess like you can start him and just have him be like a 18 to 20 minute game guy or something like that. But to me, I'm like much more interested in having Vando at the 4 because of what he can bring. Like his defense just matters a lot more to me. He's a better rebounder. He does, frankly, everything better other than mid-range scoring than Rui right now. And I think, well, yes, there are certain limitations. I think leaning into, okay, what if we really just try and be a team that can find our way defensively, has options as an offensive team, really tries to get out in transition more, sort of the what they had, a couple of years ago when that was really their bread and butter. Again, it's a different team for sure, but I do think that they could really look into that and try and be more of that mold again. So that's where I would probably go.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see them play a team that can really put pressure on them defensively with some of the lineup constructions, like using D'Angelo Russell and Malik Beasley together. I feel like it's something that is going to be difficult for them if they don't use like Austin Reeves at the point of attack in those lineups, right? The Hornets just can't, or not the Hornets, I'm sorry, good Lord, the Pelicans can't really quite do that. It's complicated for them right now without Zion. So it's interesting. The Beasley thing is going to be interesting just because like he gives them a real dynamic as a shooter. I would venture that will be helpful probably in bench units more than it will be as a starter. Totally agree with you on Rui. I think the Rui thing has gone as good as it possibly could have, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah. Minus he hasn't shot well, but from 3. But other than that, like, yeah, I think he's been solid. Like he's been a solid rotation player for them, which that's something.
Totally. I think at the end of the day, it's probably D'Angelo Russell, LeBron, Jared Vanderbilt, Anthony Davis, Austin Reeves is their best 5. If you made me bet. Having a 2-way guy out there in Austin Reeves that can shoot and defend, and then having a guy in Jared Vanderbilt that can take the 4. Like that is what LeBron wants. As you said with Rui, like LeBron loves not having to play the 4. Jared Vanderbilt stops that from happening, and Jared's just a more effective player than Rui at this point. So yeah, that's my bet on it. And then you can have Schroeder run second units. You can have Malik Beasley get shots in second units out in transition and all that stuff. Okay. Last part of the show. Mark Schindler ISO time, folks. Mark Schindler on Malaki Branham. Let's dive deep. Go for it.
Yeah. I am so here for Malaki Branham. I don't remember if we'd ever talked about this, but I was like exceptionally high on him last year. Like I had a lot of regret on him. I thought that this was a guy that every year, people are looking for who's that, quote unquote star bet. And I thought it was him in this last draft in terms of like a guy who maybe flies in under the radar. Obviously was super young, was not at all expected to be a one and done guy at Ohio State and just popped after Ohio State had their COVID break. So I think what makes him so fascinating is watching what his development has been like this year, because I've kept up a lot with the Spurs just because they're in a really interesting spot of seeing a ton of guys develop. And he went from a guy who, and like, granted, like we have to be real, like the Spurs are not good right now. They are arguably the worst team in the NBA. They are they are relatively competitive still. Like they get blown out some for sure, but they've even like the last like week or two, they've been in most of their games. I think when you're looking at a young player and how they're gauging, like I'm not looking like, yes, again, like there's levels to competitive basketball, but when I'm looking at, okay, Malaki Branham at the beginning of the season, first of all, I mean, he's not even starting off in San Antonio. He's, getting G League assignments at first, which good. Like that's what he needed. When he was playing, he was looking like very all over the place. He was passing up a lot of threes. He was like just overall, like you could see a lot of hesitancy in his game. And I think over the last month, so like after Christmas, I think you could really start to see, because he became like just before Christmas, he became a regular rotation player for them. They decided to bring him up from the G League full time. And it was a little bit rocky for him at first, kind of finding his way as a ball handler. Like I think the mid-range scoring has popped the entire season. Like the pull-up shooting has been there. But like January, he really starts to find like the pacing and ability to just be this really funky, strong change of pace guard / wing. He's a weird mold with what his size is, but and then I think, later January, you started to see his pick and roll playmaking pop a little bit. Like he's getting better with hitting some of like just finding his roller, like timing that stuff better. Because I think earlier in the year, you could see him really looking to make pocket passes and make the right pick and roll read, but he'd either do it too early or too late or premeditate it. And I think now you're starting to see him just kind of do it in the flow. And then February is hit. He's a full-time starter now. And let me just read off his February numbers because this is awesome. 8 games in February. So granted, it is a relatively small sample size, but it is meaningful. 18.1 points per game, 4 boards, 3 assists, 52% from the field, 41% from 3 on 6 a game. Not getting to the line very much, which that's a talking point with him for sure. The biggest thing for me is like, this is a guy who went from at St. Vincent St. Mary's, like he just did not shoot threes. He was not a 3-point shooter like at all.
Mid-range gunner.
Primarily just a mid-range guy. So that's why last year at Ohio State, like he originally was not even a starter, wasn't really taking threes at all for them. And then after the COVID break, whatever snapped for him, he was like, all right, I'm going to pull up. I'm going to start taking threes. It wasn't even that. I think he took like 3.5, 4 threes per game after the COVID break. It still wasn't even that much considering what his usage is. But to see him do it now, like, he's not hitting his pull-ups super well yet. I checked the numbers earlier today. I think he's like 3 of 20 on pull-ups, pull-up threes on the season. And almost all those have come, over the last month. But like he's finding ways to open himself up off the ball and be ready to shoot. And just doing all these things that he had not done it all last year. Like it was not accustomed to doing it all in high school. Wasn't really doing an AAU. So like the scoring growth has been really fast and really impressive from him in that regard. I was really high on what his shooting potential could be just because like he has ungodly touch at his size with what he does. Like, especially with how hard his diet is, like he's shooting like over 50% on floaters this year. And that's most of his shots are floaters and like tough leaners and faders. But I think again, like looking at all this, it's less about what the scoring is. It's more just the process overall. Like the level of comfort he's at, as I think he's the 8th youngest player in the NBA right now. He's like a week. I was researching this earlier. He's a week older than Jeremy Sohan. And he just legitimately has been a good scorer who is comfortable handling the ball and pick and roll, making the right reads and getting off shots that are extremely difficult and doing it well. Like, again, it's a small sample size, so you don't want to take too much from it. But I think this is the stuff that had me encouraged about him. Like, if you continue to see this kind of growth and process from him of continuing to find his game, figure out how to, like, because playing with Zach Collins has actually been really fun for him. Like, Zach Collins, I thought was playing well all year, given what his role was. And now instead of having Jakob as the screen role threat, you have Zach, who brings some of the same things as a screener and DHO guy, not the same level of screener, but is a pretty good like DHO playmaker. But then you add that pop threat, and now I think that adds an interesting dynamic. I'm just really excited about what this can be because you have the framework of a guy who, while noting he has real deficiencies as a rim scorer, like I think what I'm interested by, like, because he is very strong, is can he really, like, one of the swing skills for him is going to be what is his foul baiting craft? Like that's going to be huge for him. Like how can I draw free throws, use my arms, use my shoulders, use my length, and try and bait people into fouls? Because I do think that's going to be necessary for him to buoy his scoring a little bit. Because he's like, I think he's dunked 3 times this year. at most.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, the free throw numbers. In February, he's only gotten to the line in 3 games out of 8. And that's kind of the thing with him. Like most of his free throw attempts from last year were like, I mean, they call things differently in college to a degree. Like part of that, you're bigger, faster, stronger, even if you're not like a vertical athlete. Like he was 6'5" and could just bully people. And he has to a degree on some smaller guards this year. But again, like what does it start to look like as defenses adjust is going to be really key. But again, like I'm not to get too far ahead of myself, but like this is really exciting stuff, what he brings, because again, like teams want guys who can handle the ball, that can make solid decisions. I've never thought he was a great field player, but I never thought he had bad feel for the game. And I actually think over the last month, like you've seen his feel improve, and just continue to improve his court vision and how he feels in the court. And when you have a guy who can do these kind of things, that is flashing some of the ability to be a multi-level scorer on good efficiency and hit difficult shots with regularity, like that's exciting shit. And that's why I was excited about him. That's why I'm going to be excited about him moving forward.
So 2 things I want to bring up that you sort of hit on one of them. You didn't really hit on the other one. The first
the
one
defense
is
like terrible. If you're about to hit on the defense, defense is abysmal.
That's the second thing, and I'll talk about that in a second. The first thing is just like the pace he plays at. He plays entirely at his own pace. There is never a point where he looks hurried. There is never a point where it feels like defenders can like get underneath him and bother him because of how strong he is, right? Like he will take a ball screen, he'll pound dribble twice, put it between his legs, put it back between his legs, basically stop and pause in the mid-range, which is a really hard thing to do for young players, right? It's really, really hard for them with all of the length, all of the athleticism, everything that's flying around. It's often really, really hard for young players to just stop in that area and figure out what's going on and decide what to do and keep a defender on their hip, keep a defender, on their back. He does that really, really well. I think that that's what I've been most impressed with, that has translated immediately. That's a difficult thing. Even guys that do that in college, especially teenagers transitioning to the NBA doing it, that doesn't always happen. It takes guys a long time to figure that out in many cases. That he has that already is what makes me think that, as you said, the process is good here. It's not a situation where the process is poor. He is able to just kind of hold his space. And even though he's not getting all the way to the rim, he is creating interesting opportunities both for himself and his teammates because he is such a good mid-range shooter. Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because that's the thing that stands out to me most, even beyond the shooting, the touch, everything like that. That's the skill that I think translates really, really well to the NBA, is being able to just get to your spot in the mid-range, be comfortable, be unhurried, have your balance underneath you. That's what makes him such a good shooter in many cases. Like his balance, it feels like, is always the center of gravity is always underneath him.
Yeah. Yeah. He's awesome, man. I really like his get down is so fun to me, man. Because exactly like you mentioned, there are not guys like him really. Like I think people can look at his shot.
Well, it's funny. Like this is a good example. Someone that you really like is Jalen Noel. Jalen Noel is someone that does this really well too.
Yeah. And what's fun too is like Malaki has so much better prospect too. But it's like I
just keep better than Jalen Noel.
Yeah. I just keep getting talking about it, man. Like it's because like you mentioned, like the pacing, like they're just, again, with how young he is, like so often I feel like most guys are coming into the league with all of their skills like super developed and refined, but they don't have that pacing. Like that's the stuff that takes a longer time for players to kind of figure out and get behind. But with him, like he's coming in with that already, and there just aren't a lot of guys who have that. So super exciting to track moving forward, because they are, like, again, not to discount anybody or like toss anybody aside, but as things have gone this season, I would say, like, obviously Vassell is at the top for me with what he's looked like. Obviously he's had the injury, which has sucked. But Sohan has done really exciting things. I'd argue that Malaki has probably been their third most exciting prospect this year with what he's done. Because
are we just like moving on from Keldon Johnson?
I wouldn't.
Is
I'm
no
not
longer
sure I'm
being a
calling
prospect
Keldon a
anymore.
prospect right now. Like,
Yeah,
like because
reasonable.
he's a vet to me. Like, and he's still doing good and exciting things. It's been a weird year for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like Blake Wesley has really struggled this year. Part of that, I mean, he's young too, but again, like he and Malaki are like the same age. So it's, I don't know, just in terms of the way things are shaking out, it's really exciting.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this season has gone as well as it could have for San Antonio, given that they came in with no vets, like very little lottery end, like high end lottery talent. And they've developed these guys really, really well. I think that Sohan looks great. I think that Branham looks really, really good. And, you know, if you hit 2 out of 3 with him and Branham and Wesley, you're going to be really happy. I do want to talk about the defense very quickly, but in a different way that I think you want to talk about it, or you don't want to talk about it. Yes, he's a really bad defender, and that's accurate. It's been accurate at Ohio State. Having said that, I watch a lot of Ohio State because, of course, I do. I went to Ohio State. I love the university. I
watched a lot of Ohio State this year. Woof.
It's not
Iowa
great.
game
They're in the
yesterday,
midst.
not good.
Yeah, they're in the midst of a disaster season. And they're in the midst of a disaster season because their defense is terrible, right? I'm starting to wonder, because we're going through this right now with Bryce Sensabaugh, right? Like Bryce Sensabaugh's defense is really bad too. How much of it is these are two specific prospects that just had 2 very weak defensive games? And I think they've always had weak defensive games. You go back and you watch Branham's tape at the prep level. You go back and you watch Bryce's game at the prep level. It was not good. They were both very bad defenders. Is this like an evaluation thing where the Ohio State coaching staff is not caring enough about defense? Is it a teaching thing where they're not teaching it well enough? But we now do have like a fairly unfortunate track record of the last 3 years where they finished 82nd, 111th. Right now they're 110th in defensive efficiency, according to KenPom. I don't know, man. Like I'm wondering if Branham, I guess, being in that San Antonio system, playing for Greg Popovich, maybe there's a case that the defense comes around, I guess is where I'm at.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think it can come around. It's going to be more dependent for me. Like, he's really going to have to get better with angles and stuff because he's in a weird spot of like, as good as he is with like, shoulder dipping around screens as an offensive player, and taking angles and being adept with that. He is so bad at that defensively, which I think that's stuff you can learn, but that's going to be a ton of reps because like as solid as his feel for the game is offensively, I think his feel for the game as a defender is pretty bad. Like I don't think that his foot speed is like terrible and he has wingspan, but he's just in a weird spot with what his build is.
But yeah, like how much of that is teaching versus like how much of this is teachable versus just like innate feel is going to be a really interesting. He's going to be a really interesting case study for that because he's coming from a really bad scenario, seemingly for that, going to a really good scenario playing for Greg Popovich and the Spurs, who for like 2 straight decades up until the last 2 years where they've gone full youth movement have been unbelievable defensively. Yeah. So like he should theoretically be. This should be like a really good test case, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm positive. Like I'm fairly optimistic that he can get to be like a neutral defender. I don't think he's ever going to be a significant positive. But I think like he definitely, like exactly you mentioned, it's one of the bigger swing skills for him. Like I think arguably like those things become.
It's why I was lower on him than you pre-draft.
Those things are like they end up being the bigger swing skills. I'm like, okay, well, does this guy continue to get more minutes to develop out that offensive game? So having that defensive ability to be able to stick, especially in like, but that's part of why San Antonio was a good place for him because he's not going to have some of the same like he's going to get more leeway than he would be if he was in a place that is in a more like I know a lot of Raptors fans have like really wanted like every time I tweet about Malaki, like that's our pick. Like, I'm like, I do not think Malaki fits anything of what they want in Toronto. Like I get it, just from a straight up looking at the pick, but it's an important reminder of how important environment is because I don't think that he would thrive in Toronto right now.
No, I think that's right. I mean, for what it's worth, I had Malaki at 21 last year and talked a lot about basically like all of the offensive like skill. It's just I just didn't think that. What I was wrong on is that I think he can make his play style work efficiently. Like I had real like questions about whether or not that would be effective. I also had real questions about the shot as well. Like his pre-draft shooting was apparently really bad. If you talk to teams, he was trying to go through some mechanical adjustments, I guess, and it just was not working in the way that we had hoped. And by the way, he's still shooting 31% from three. Like these last few games have been really, really good. Like what is it, 7 or 8 games? But he is 31% from three so far this year. So that's really the swing skill, is him shooting from distance consistently. And if he can't do that, it's going to be hard. But the creativity, like I actually really buy the ability now to like get into the areas that he needs to get into, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I agree.
Have you watched any movies, Mark, this week?
Dude, I've watched so many movies. Oh my God.
Have you?
Yes. Yeah.
Good
So I've
for you,
watched,
man.
I think I've watched almost all of the Terminator movies back again. I watched Terminator 3 for the first time, and I know why it was the first time I watched it now. That was so bad.
It's fine.
It's a pretty dreadful movie. Yeah. It was like, what's so tough is like in Terminator 2, I would argue that Terminator 2 is like Arnold's best acting performance of all time. He's good in Predator,
I think
but like
that's
Terminator 2 is
really
unreal.
good case. Yeah.
But like, and I think some people would scoff at that and be like, well, I mean, it's just an action movie, but like he legitimately acts incredibly well in that movie. I think I look at it almost the same way as I look at Wesley Snipes in Blade. Like, could anybody else have pulled this off, been as cool as they did doing it, and been believable? And I think the answer is no. So like, to me, that's good acting. But Jesus, he's so bad in Terminator 3. The whole script is bad. The plot is bad. Acting overall is bad. Dude who plays John Connor, just like not believable at all. It's a fine movie. Like it's like, I'll give it like a 5 out of 10. I like Terminator Salvation better than Terminator 3, which I know might be a hot take for some. Because that was like the last movie Sam Worthington did before he dropped off the face of the earth out of acting. Because remember, like Sam Worthington was in like every movie for about 4 years, and then they're like, "Oh, you're not an actor anymore, so we're not going to put you in movies anymore."
Yeah, which one? I'm trying to remember the difference between Salvation and Genesis.
Was one that Christian Bale was in.
Salvation is better than Genesis. Then Genesis, I thought was like a pure disaster.
I did not like Genesis. Genesis was weird.
Yeah.
It was like a movie that had Terminator qualities that was absolutely nothing like it. It's very weird.
Have you seen Dark Fate?
Dark Fate is on my watch list. I'm probably going to watch it tonight, actually, because that's
Dark Fate is good.
One I haven't watched. I've heard it's good. I've actually never seen that one before.
Yeah, Dark Fate is really, really good. I think you will enjoy that. Yeah, the best Arnold acting performances are probably Running Man.
Yeah,
definitely T2. I mean, I'll always go to bat for Kindergarten Cop, just in general.
Kindergarten Cop, dude.
That movie should never work, and it does.
Fun fact about Kindergarten Cop: that was so I grew up like right in the essential time of like when a movie just runs every day.
Yeah,
for
that was on TNT all the time.
So I've always been an early riser, right? Like I've always been somebody who wakes up like 5:45, 6, just because I grew up in a pretty small house and my bedroom was right next to the bathroom. My parents woke up at 5:30 to get ready for work. So, all right, man, if the shower turns on, I'm up because it's right next to my wall. So I'd be up and like ready to go to school by like 6:30. And then my bus wouldn't get there until like 8:15. So I just watched movies in the morning. And so, yeah, I watched Kindergarten Cop. Like, I mean, I think I watched it every day for a couple of weeks before I changed it up. But yeah, Kindergarten Cop rocks. It's a good movie.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what else have you watched? Have you watched anything else?
I'm trying to think because I know I have watched other stuff. Let me pull my.
You gotta get on that Letterboxd hive.
Schindler. I've been putting stuff on Letterboxd, but I keep forgetting to update it. What about you? What have you watched recently?
So I've been very locked into work, and really I was like full out until 2 days ago. And over the last 2 days, I watched the Creed movies again.
Nice. Creed 1 is so good. Yeah.
Creed is one of the best movies of the last 15 years.
I would agree with that.
I think it is so good. It works in every capacity in a way that it shouldn't work in every capacity. Ryan Coogler, that's
he's one
the
of my
movie
favorite directors, man. I'm ready for anything that he directs. I'm gonna watch.
When that movie came out, that's the one where because I really liked Fruitvale Station. I thought it was amazing, and I was just like, well, let's see what he can do now. Like, this is theoretically like a really good fit for him, but he's leveling up in like a pretty real way, doing like a popcorny movie. And that was the movie where I was just like, oh no, like this guy is like new Spielberg. Like he is going to be everything. And then he went on to do both Black Panther movies, and it's been just as effective. And I think that the last Black Panther is probably not as good as the first one, obviously. But
that was another. I just watched that because that just came out, obviously.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad. Like, I mean, I think it was good. It just like it almost felt a little bit too long to me.
I don't think that it was his fault that it was so
I'm not saying
bad.
It's his fault. It's just having to do what they did was really difficult.
I
can't imagine
you essentially. Yeah, like Chadwick Boseman like passes like right before they're about to start shooting, and they have to retool it on the fly in such a substantial way. And I feel like it is basically two movies. Like it's reckoning with the grief of T'Challa and Chadwick Boseman's passing, as well as trying to move forward this Marvel story in like a substantial way. And it's just hard to do all of that in an effective manner in 2.5 hours. And I think he did as well as he could have. It's just the movie doesn't hang as well together as you want it to, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you seen Ant-Man yet?
I have not. I'm not like super enticed to see Ant-Man. I'm like a little bit, I don't want to say I'm marveled out, but like it's so much, man. Like I love Marvel. I love the MCU. It's been one of my favorite things to keep up with over the last decade of my life, but also it's just like getting to be a little too much, man. At least for me. And I don't mean to sound boomery, but like I
don't mean to sound boomery, says the 26-year-old.
I'm 25. Okay, I got 2 more months, 3 more months. But like it just like, I don't know. It's starting to feel like content for content's sake sometimes. So like I'll go see it. I haven't particularly loved Ant-Man. Like he's a fine character, but like out of all the Avengers, he's the one I probably care the least about, other than Hawkeye. I'll go to bat every day to say Hawkeye is like the least compelling character out of anybody in Avengers. I mean, it's hard.
Have you seen the Hawkeye TV show?
I have not. I've actually heard it's kind of decent, but
it's really good. I really enjoyed it.
I mean, I just now finished WandaVision. That's how bad I've been at keeping up with some of the Marvel shit.
For what it's worth, before you see Ant-Man and the Wasp, you should watch Loki.
Okay. All right. I have not watched Loki, so I will do that. That is like the next thing I have to catch up on Disney Plus. Have you been watching Last of Us?
Yes.
Oh, dude, what do you think?
Goodness.
I was ready to cry last Friday. But yeah.
Goodness. I mean, it's so as I think we've talked about before, I did not play the Last of Us games.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, like it was right in my wheelhouse. It just was a blind spot for whatever reason. So I'm like going into this completely fresh and like not knowing what's going to happen. And yeah, I mean, it's just unbelievable. Like the way that, so like, did you watch Chernobyl?
I did not. It's the same director, though, isn't it?
Craig Mazin did Chernobyl as well as this, and Chernobyl it's strange because like Chernobyl is like this incredibly serious event that happened in 1986 with a nuclear reactor failing in the Ukraine. And, this is a video game TV show, right? But you can see a lot of the same touches in Chernobyl that you do in The Last of Us, just in terms of like the depths of despair and also like the little moments of humanity that people try to pull out of that despair as much as anything. I think that that's what Craig Mazin is really, really good at finding, is being able to build those moments of like those real moments where you try and, even though you're in the midst of an incredibly difficult environment, you try to find something that you can latch onto and that you derive, real like mirth from, basically. I think he's really, really good at doing that in this show. Obviously, the third episode is like a big example of that with Murray Bartlett and Nick Offerman. I thought the episode that you're talking about, the fifth episode with Henry and Sam, like that's kind of exactly what we're talking about here. And that I think is what differentiates this show from The Walking Dead, from all of these other shows you could compare it to, and why I think it's as impactful and as effective as it is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like what I've loved is like I think some people, and I think a lot of the reasons have been bad, didn't like the second episode. I mean the third episode. I loved it. Like I love the way that they are,
Not
like for
liking
me
the
at
third
least,
episode is a bad take. It's a
it was a very
bad take.
but like I think when people are bringing up good faith arguments, or at least like reasonable faith arguments, that they don't like, TV adaptations that make changes. I think I just look at it differently. Like to me, um, I don't want like a direct adaptation. Like I want it to be something that adds something to it, adds something of value. And I think what I've loved about the show is they've been very true to the game while also expanding upon what your knowledge base is and helping
Mm,
you get further, more complex understanding of the world that you're in. And I mean, that's what's so powerful about the third episode. Like these two characters that you really hardly know anything about from like a 15-minute playthrough in the game, you get this entire world knowledge and you just get so much more emotion and understanding. And like, it's beautiful, honestly. Like, and I think part of what, like you mentioned, part of what has helped really been cool for me in this, because like the game, like obviously you pick up a lot of stuff in the game. I think you really don't get the full picture until you're at the end of the game and get like a
mm,
better which you are not gonna be ready for the end of the season. Now I think about it, but like the appreciation you get out of like all this hardship is about like finding, like I mean Joel is a character who is completely devoid of love and feeling. Like that's the whole point. That's why he's doing what he's doing. That's where he's at. Like he's trying to go reconnect with like the last person in his life that he has any kind of connection to, his brother. Um and like as we see, part of what was so powerful about this last episode, like you start to see him get that feeling like when he looks back at the grave after Ellie starts walking away, and you can see like he's starting to get some of those feelings back. He's like, I really care about this person. Like I can
right.
feel the things that I felt for my daughter again. And it's just powerful stuff. Cause like you mentioned, like as much as it's difficult and hard to deal with some of the sad things, like it's really about finding hope and compassion and joy again in a world where it seems like it should be impossible to. And
Right.
I love it. It's such great storytelling. And more importantly, like Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey have been awesome. Like they've been
Yeah.
so good in this. All the surrounding casting has been awesome. Like I can't remember her name, but who just played Kathleen. She was fantastic in this.
Yeah. Melanie Linsky.
Yeah. Like you
Yeah.
mentioned, Murray Bartlett and Nick Offerman were awesome in that episode. Everything it feels impactful, and I've really
Yeah.
enjoyed it. I want it to be Sunday already so that I can watch the next episode because it's been so good. And
Have you watched Yellow Jackets yet?
I've not. I've heard it's good.
Yellow Jackets should be next on your list. That Melanie
Okay.
Linsky is like the main character in that show. It fucking rules. It's so good.
I've
It
heard
comes
it's
back
really
in
good.
March. And it's probably the thing I'm most looking forward to TV wise. I thought it was just like incredible. Just because like Christina Ricci's in it too, and Christina Ricci is just like having the most fun on planet Earth playing this role.
Yeah.
And yeah, the whole show is great. Um, yeah, I don't know. That's all I've got. I haven't watched a ton of new movies recently.
Okay. I mean, last shot I watched Blade 2 for the first time. I'd never seen Blade
Good
2
for you,
because
man.
I was worried that Blade, like, I was like, am I gonna lose like the feeling that I had from Blade 1? Nope, still rocked. I will not watch Blade 3 because I've heard that Blade 3 is bad, but the one that Ryan Reynolds is in. But yeah, Wesley Snipes, just you cannot recapture that man. Like he was
Why
so good.
why do I think that I don't mind Blade 3? What am I thinking here?
I'll have to check it out, but I've heard very bad things about Blade 3.
Oh no, this is not what I'm thinking of. This is like goateed Ryan Reynolds. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, this movie is not very good.
Yeah. So I mean,
It's
I enjoy bad movies, but like I don't want Blade ruined for me because I really like Blade's like a comfort movie for me. Like I love Blade. It was dope because like the first Blade, like it very much feels like a late 90s movie in every facet. And it's funny because like this movie picks up on like some of the same stuff, but in the early 2000s way. Because I think Blade 2 was like 2003 or 2004, if I remember correctly. And like it was so enjoyable. I really loved it.
Yeah. Mark, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at MG_Schindler. I definitely want to promote a podcast I've been working on and really enjoying called They've Got Now. It's all things women's basketball, and diving in and having some really great interviews. I just had Kalia Copper of Chicago Sky on. She was fantastic. I recommend listening to that and checking that out. I'll have tons of work coming out over the next week or so. But yeah, man, it's been fun.
Go subscribe to They've Got Now, Mark's venture talking about women's basketball and talking to many women's basketball players throughout the course of while you've been doing that. Like you've gotten what, like 7 or 8 on, haven't you?
Yeah, and I just recorded 2 more today. So it's been of course it was like one of those weeks where it's like, well, I've been trying to schedule these like a few for like a month, and of course all PR people hit me up the same day like, well, what if we do this week?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I will make it work, even though I probably shouldn't. So we'll go from there.
Yeah.
But you know how it goes.
Go to The Athletic. I've written way too many words this week, if I'm being completely honest. Mock draft is up from yesterday. Go read and find that. What else? I wrote about the draft and the impact of the trade deadline on the 2023 NBA draft, from some of the things that Houston did to Utah to the picks that swapped hands, everything, this, that, and the other thing. What else? Yeah, just go to The Athletic, click my profile, and you will find all of the things that I've written recently. What else do we have for you here? Go to theathletic.com/game theory. Go subscribe to the show like that. It's probably the best way that you can support the show. Go to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube. Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vecini. That is a great way for you to support the show. That's actually free for you. All you have to do is hit that subscribe button and you will help us out quite a bit. Hit the like button on the bottom of this video if you're watching on YouTube while we go live, and hit the subscribe button on your many podcasting apparatuses, from Apple to Spotify to whatever platform you use to listen to podcasts. Now that all of that is out of the way, until next time, we will talk soon.